Hello Assassins, Gargudon here, and at long last, welcome to episode 20 of the Memory Corridor, here on The Ones Who Came Before. Today, as a new year has begun, we're going to be looking back at Assassin's Creed throughout 2021, release content, the pros and cons, and much more in between. Guest hosting this is fellow The Ones Who Came Before partner and writer Michael Smith, who I will now give the word to.
Hey everyone, Michael here. I'm glad to be guest hosting today's episode. Joining me as guests are the ones who came before partners Joe and Sophia. Just before we get into it, both of you say hi and tell the audience about yourselves and what kind of content you provide for the site here. Let's start with you, Joe.
Hello everyone. Well, my name is Joe, and the content I provide mainly for the one who came before is I'm doing a modern day only timeline. I extract with content I collected from books and from comic books, and mainly everything that creates the transmedia of the franchise. So yes, it's going all the way from 2000 to 2021, and whatever game may come out in the future, modern day, I will cover it. I'm a maniac of modern day. I love it.
That's great. Sophia, how about you?
Well, I mostly do illustrations and streaming for the ones that came before, and that's pretty much it. I just draw a lot and make some jokes live most of the time.
Always great. And of course, for myself, I am one of the content writers for the site. My focus is very heavy in transmedia, as I collect a lot of the books, and I'm currently in the process of a genetic memory timeline where I play the games, read the books, watch the movies, everything in order of when they took place inside the Animus. So pretty much the opposite of what Joe is doing. And I also do a handful of reviews. So now that we have all the introductions out of the way, let's look back on the year 2021 in Assassin's Creed. So the first thing we want to cover is what have been y'all's thoughts on the story expansions released for Assassin's Creed Valhalla through the year? What parts do you think worked for it? What parts do you think didn't? And what do you hope to see future content consist of?
Well, it's been curious seeing how Valhalla has been developed. To be fair, when I reached the end of the game, my first thought was, okay, how is this gonna go from here? Like, how are they gonna pull a DLC that still connects to the story? Because I'll be honest with you, I thought the DLCs were gonna be way more related to the plot of the game, first of all, and I was hoping they would tie the modern day into it more. But considering the way the narrative was structured, it was probably the best idea they had to just add, some side missions, a side DLC that you can kind of play it as a standalone, I guess. Even if you're not through with the story. And I don't know, I thought it was very clever. I was not the biggest fan of it, personally speaking. But that's just because of the expectations that I had. But all in all, I think it works. I think with a format like that, it's likely something that they're gonna keep, because it just allows you to add stuff however you see fit.
Joe, what are your thoughts on the DLC so far? The expansions?
Well, I'm totally going with Sophia here. I mean, she's right, and it was very clear that from the end of Odyssey, they kept this custom of adding the real ending through DLCs. Not in this case, though. They were clever, as she said about it. They did some standalone stories just to make it go unnoticed, but still. What about if Ragnarok now has the real ending? If you know what I mean. You're paying $40 for the real ending? I don't think they're gonna do it, because maybe they learned the lesson from Odyssey that the modern day continued in the DLCs of Atlantis. I think it was called the Fate of Atlantis. I think it was. Yep. And I mean, I didn't care, because as a fan, I will always buy their stuff just to know what happens next. But a person that maybe doesn't want to spend extra money, it's like, oh, so what? I have to pay now $30 more just to know what happens to Lila and what happens to whoever. And
Oh man,
you know,
I completely skipped Fate of Atlantis, and I had friends coming to me like, "No, you have to play this." I was like, "No, it's a DLC. What do you mean?"
exactly. And you know what was more painful in that DLC? The fact that they literally took off one of the most important characters in the modern day section. It's Berg, Giovanni Otto Berg. I don't know why they did that, but still. But going back to the Valhalla DLCs, it's clear, as I said, that they're trying to make a huge, ecosystem in which they can fit you whatever they want to down the throat. Like, hey, new story, hey, new characters, hey, you remember that thing it was vaguely mentioned in the previous DLC? Where now there's a new world around it in this new DLC. So it's a bit strange, but as I said, I don't care as long as DLCs are gonna come out. I'm gonna buy them because I need to play them. I need to review them in my own space. I need to know if there's gonna be modern day or not. And I would also like the modern day story to continue, because we've been left with this bittersweet ending in the base game of Valhalla. We don't know what's gonna happen. Some important characters are brought back per se, and it can be very defining for the future of the franchises. So I don't know, but yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, and I agree with both of y'all's thoughts on that. I know that the way that the Valhalla DLC, as well as Assassin's Creed in the current RPG trilogy, has provided a DLC release window very similar to your standard AAA games. I know the first major one that I can really remember them releasing was the alternative history option of King Washington for AC3. And then, of course, in Unity giving Dead Kings and Syndicate giving Jack the Ripper, they started adding bigger story expansions to continue those characters a little bit further after the ending of their main game. And with Valhalla, it's been over a year now since its release, so I think we're okay to speak freely about it. The ending closed the Viking saga for Eivor. She met her goals of building her new home for her people and coming to terms with King Alfred in what he was doing. The Templars were definitely an issue, and with her assistance, he shut them down and left her to have her peace, and she left him to have his peace, because she's not looking to make enemies, she's looking to take care of her people. But then, of course, you start your expansions, the first one being Wrath of the Druids, traveling to Ireland because her cousin is having issues in Dublin, and she needs to help him with that. Introduces a little bit more of the Isu magic, we'll just call it magic, with the Druids and everything. And then in the second one, continuing the Viking saga with one of the most notable pieces of history in Viking, in the Viking era, with the Siege of Paris. While this was a slight difference from the one that most people are aware of with Rollo and
Ragnar,
thank you. I'm trying not to get confused with Skyrim characters. But yes, with Ragnar, it provided in my opinion, a very good Viking story, because I thought that the enemy in Charles the Fat and his army, and then his mental issues, was a great thing for Eivor to deal with. It was a human element, and I felt like the game has successfully been a human story. Even though the Assassins and Templar story was kind of off to the side because you were playing a third party who really has no interest in what they're doing, but at least agrees that yes, there is an issue, I will help you with it, kind of continuing that mercenary saga that we had in Odyssey. It gives a very good historical gameplay game, or I guess a historical-based game, and that's one of the major underlining things for Assassin's Creed. But then on top of it, we're in that Isu era now. We've had our modern-day story, we've had our heavy assassin stories and Templar stories with the Ezio, or not Ezio trilogy, the Desmond saga, then the Templar saga when they took over in AC4, and then as far as the modern day goes, now we're in the Isu. And I know that's a thing that a lot of people have disagreed with because they want the core Assassins versus Templar story, but there is that third party that should be explored, and I feel like is being explored well enough while giving us a game that is very lived in. I jump into my Assassin's Creed Valhalla save data, which is over 260 hours now. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more, I honestly don't remember, but I've lived in it. I've got a fully built settlement. I've got people all across England and Ireland and even now Scotland with the new crossover that I recognize, I have conversations with, and that's something that we haven't really had with an Assassin's Creed game too much in the past. And moving towards this games as a service platform, which is what's happening, is providing us longer time with these characters to when we do get to the point to where they're like, here is the end of Eivor's story. This is how Eivor ended up in Vinland. This is how Eivor died. I feel like it's going to be a very good close to the Viking saga to where we're not asking for more. They did it with Ezio, they did it with Altair, in my opinion, gave them great lives, gave them great stories, and outside of some little things that you may not get until the transmedia, such as Altair and his wife going after Genghis Khan. Ezio meeting Mona Lisa, little things that you would only find in the comics, or certain plot points that you may only see in spin-off books, transmedia and stuff like that. I feel like they're giving us more, but they're building that world. They don't want to have just the idea of, oh yeah, they're just in the machine, they get what they need, they get out. No, we want to know what is going on in history, because that's the interesting part. The modern day, in my opinion, is the bonus. That's the dessert to the story. And yes, the Valhalla did fall kind of short on the modern day because they didn't pull us consistently out of the Animus to say, okay, here's the next bit of information we have. This is what you need. This isn't a hub for information anymore. It's, we're out here, we're working on trying to figure out what's going on. Our protagonist is in the process of dying pretty much because she can't handle the power of this Isu artifact. We need to figure out how to get her out. And then you hit the end of the game and the protagonist has now switched to the anti-hero, I'll call him, with Loki Bassian.
Which is actually a first in the franchise.
It is. It's a first in the franchise that we're actually getting to play a sage in the modern day. And it's great because it leaves so much open, especially because you have that kind of anti-hero, He's not necessarily a bad guy, he's just somebody who's trying to get his family back. And now he kind of has them.
I don't know about you, but the fact that he wanted so insistingly to meet with William just creeped me out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's you go after the leader. That's why he went after Sigurd when he met him in.
I don't know what William is gonna think about it. He's gonna freak out, definitely.
I don't feel necessarily that he will, because William has come across some stuff already through his son.
I know.
I think it's going to be the start of I think it's going to become the start of the end of the series, because I've talked about this with other people beforehand.
Yes.
I think that we're moving to a Assassins and Templar versus the Isu, because it's going to be much like the the human revolution against the Isu and with Adam and Eve, I think we're going to come to that again.
The Matrix.
Yeah.
It kind of already happened once before, so I can see it actually in a game. You know, when Charlotte and Berg teamed up to defeat Juno and all that. So
right.
I can see it definitely, and actually I think it's logical. I mean, yeah, like the events, the whole. I mean, the events of the universe of Assassin's Creed, the universe it's set in are like repeating itself. I mean, if a few catastrophes happened, and there's always gonna be a new one, and it's like inevitable. I think you're right about it. Maybe the events of the human rebellion against the East is gonna happen again in those events that are constantly repeating. Maybe it's a cycle or something that we might see broken in the future. I don't know, but it's a nice theory actually. I like it.
Yeah, and I think this is. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh no, I was just thinking that they also opened an interesting door for the narrative. I think by bringing Basim into the present from 1,000 years ago, I could also see them using that as an excuse to explore, you know, both Basim's story and Loki's story in our world. Because obviously,
yes.
I want to hope that they'll bring it back for modern day. Because I mean, the premise is that at this point.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah,
Basim
they
also,
definitely have to bring it back.
Yeah, they've got to do that. But we also have to remember that Basim, before finding, you know, Abel and Sigurd and the Viking crew, he had been alive for quite some time, and we don't know what he was doing exactly. We have a few clues here and there. But I don't know. I could see them taking that opportunity to have both the Hidden One story, because at that point you would have, you know, since there's been a lot of backlash about not getting an assassin protagonist, you would get to have the assassin protagonist and also, you know, the counterpart that's Isu. And I don't know. I think I don't know if they're gonna do something about that, if that's on the table or not, but I feel like that would be a pretty cool idea. Imagine if you could play both the same character both in the past and the present.
Yeah, that would be amazing, and it actually moves us into the next question with this being another year of the Assassin's Creed franchise, and it moving in that different direction, games as a service, RPG trilogy. You know, how is that in terms of our storytelling for the game, and how is that going to impact the series going forward? And I think your point about the potential of having us being able to play Loki / Basim in the past and present is going to be a great way of doing it, because so far for Basim's story, we've had what we've viewed through the eyes of Eivor and Javi in the Assassin's Creed Valhalla story, and then there was one book that was released last year where you got to play as somebody that was trying to, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember exactly, it was a kind of a choose your own adventure puzzle book where you were trying to find Basim in Constantinople. So that actually could give us the ability of returning to Constantinople as Basim, or at least the Hidden Ones in Constantinople, and have kind of like a prequel or post-sequel of what is going on now that this mentor has been released, because he's not the head of Constantinople, but or even the head of the assassins, but him not being present, especially with Hatham still being alive in the story, is a great transition back into the assassins. And I know that we have Sword of the White Horse, if I'm not mistaken is the title, that's coming out this year, is going to be the next Valhalla novel, which Hatham is going to be a key character in it, though we will be following a new native character from England before the monarchy came through.
Yeah, there's also another graphic novel, is it? That's gonna come out actually. Too. Like
there's the monk assassin one that's
Yeah,
supposed to be coming through, but
that's
they
the one.
haven't given us any information on it in a while. And I know
No.
I reached out to Azasia on Twitter and asked, he's like, hey, you know, the website for the transmedia hasn't been updated in a while because they've announced, you know, at least 5 to 10 new pieces of transmedia,
Yeah,
and
it really went wild this year.
and nothing is being updated on the site. And I know that AC Fragments, the third book in the first set of books that they're having for that series, is going to be coming out soon. I believe it's this month on the 22nd in France, which I'm hoping to see those translated to English because I do want to get them. But if I have to, I will translate them on my phone, like I have with all of my other French books. But you know, that we have all of this content, and I've got a good idea because I have my own personal checklist of everything in order of its genetic memory and where it, you know, falls before or after, just based off of context clues and whatnot. But you know, they're keeping that story alive. But I would love to see a more up to date quarterly update, because I think monthly would be probably a bit much because not much changes. But if you're going to announce something, it should automatically be placed onto this transmedia site for just awareness.
I know, but it's what I said before. They're like experimenting. They're testing us in some ways, and they're using their own products as playgrounds to see what works and what not. And maybe sometimes they can raise high expectations, and then they realized, oh, we did something, we announced something, but we haven't it ready yet, and now people seems to really love it. What do we do? And they get paralyzed. And I don't know. I don't understand Ubisoft sometimes. It's just.
Yeah, it's kind of scattered, to be honest. I'm both excited and scared about the future because the way they've been setting up stuff, like as you said, there's a bunch of transmedia that's about to come out. There's a lot of projects, and they've just been throwing hints here and there, but there isn't, like, if you asked me, oh, what's gonna happen next in Assassin's Creed, I would have a little bit of trouble, like, mentally finding, you know, the main trail. So I think that the way they're gonna continue the narrative, like with all these things that they're setting up with the, you know, side stories, different characters that are coming up, the issue, the Templars, everything that's happening. It makes for so many possibilities in, you know, the next game. Because if you think of, you know, let's take the games as the main form of media. They could go so many directions that it's kind of mind blowing. If you ask me, what do you expect to see next in Assassin's Creed, I honestly wouldn't know what to tell you. Like, of course, yeah, there's a bunch of theories, but you know. They could throw anything in.
Yeah, it's pretty much like the last Spider-Man movie with the multiverse thing. It's there's just so many possibilities about bringing new characters, old characters that have only been mentioned in one database entry or something, but it's important. Like they did with Victoria in Odyssey. They literally created her like in Heresy, I think, or I think her first appearance was in Heresy. Then they used her in Odyssey, but nobody knew her. I mean, I didn't even knew who she was until I started doing my investigation thing for my account and all that. And I was like, shit, there's some characters that have been already established in the universe for so long that I didn't even knew about her. Like Lila's best friend, Diana, or Dina. She was actually mentioned in the Initiates database a while ago.
Yeah.
You know, they choose some random characters and make them important sometimes, so it's very erratic, it's very random. You cannot guess what's gonna come next and whatnot.
Well, a lot of it definitely with things like that will come down to, we know that we are going to need a type of character in the future for storytelling, so making a mention now, like with Layla's best friend or with Victoria, because Victoria did have her story in Heresy, and she was a major player in that, but she would have originally came from The Last Descendants.
No, sorry, I'm gonna correct you. Her first appearance was in Unity's employee handbook. Actually, she treated Robert Fraser.
That is true. It would have been Unity's employee handbook. But she was developed as a character in the Last Descendants trilogy, and then had her cameo as a supporting player in Heresy. I haven't read the first of the Last Descendants or its prequel comic, but I have read the last two and Heresy, and she's a great character for that. So after reading those books, because I read them after I saw her in after I saw her in Odyssey, and saw her in Odyssey, it was like, oh my god, that's the same character. That's a great kind of callback of sorts, but it's a way of them to continue that universe. And with that, moving on to our final question, with the current state of the franchise in mind, so keep that in mind, as well as all of these speculations that we've discussed so far during this episode, what do you both hope to see Ubisoft or the Assassin's Creed team announce, whether it be for Valhalla, Transmedia, or the upcoming Assassin's Creed Infinity platform?
Man.
Well,
where do we start?
First of all, I wish we get to see Gavin Banks in action for once.
Fair enough.
Right. Just kidding. I think that's a good point, because there's all of these player favorites, that we've met across different stories, but they haven't had their own little tale.
No,
we've had, like you had noticed, we've had these people just kind of insert into the story, and it's like, that's a really cool character, or I wish I heard more about that. And I think Infinity, as a games as a service platform, is going to be great for that, because from what I have read personally, and I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of the articles as well, we're talking a bite-size, content probably no bigger than what we would see in Dawn of Ragnarok, or no big than what we would see in, say, Dead Kings, or these small kind of, giving it a big, kind of open range, 5 to 30 hour gameplay pieces. They could tell the story of these various characters, introduce new characters, go back to previous games and kind of build off of them, and give us the Helix database, pretty much, as we saw in the Abstergo Entertainment platform. And I think that's what they're building to.
That's probably it. And I'm not sure what I would hope to see personally. I was thinking about it, but I can tell you that I'm kind of scared for the writers on this one, because that's gonna be very tricky, especially considering all the lore elements that we've mentioned so far, and we've only mentioned like a part of what Assassin's Creed lore is. That's already a lot, and I'm trying to think, if they're trying to fit all of that, if they're going to try and do that into, small stories here and there.
Right.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that, but it's gonna.
No, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely
gonna come. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Definitely not impossible, because as they said in the live stream that they had for the Transmedia, which I think is what Infinity is going to do for the video games that they've done with the Transmedia, is these developers, the individual teams, are going to be able to build a story that they want to build, an era that they want to build, and just keeping in the guidelines of the universe. So it's like, if my team wants to go back to Constantinople, they're going to be like, okay, here's all the information that you have for the universe around that period, just the history tied to that location, stay in these guidelines. And yes, things will have to be checked by Ubisoft, they have to approve things, but I think it's going to allow more teams to develop Assassin's Creed stories, whether it be callbacks or, in the way of the Transmedia, originals, chronicles, or what was the last one?
The last one. What do you mean? What's the? What?
I'm thinking back to the transmedia site. Let me pull it up.
Oh, Assassin's Creed stories. Yeah, Assassin's Creed stories. I think it is.
Yeah. So they're broken up into 3 different types. I'll just pull up my phone.
Yeah, I can see definitely the new writers now, like encyclopedia in hand, to write their new chapters. Definitely, because the universe now is just so messed up. Like you literally have to play everything, read everything, just read all the databases just to get everything from modern day, for example. So imagine it's so vast. Sometimes even myself, I get my head burns when I write a single post. I just read, I start reading, I start doing some connections, but then I end up in 4 different windows in the Wikipedia because something caught my attention, and to understand that thing I have to read another thing, but that other thing goes along with another thing. So I do that because I love it, but average fans who just want to stab people, it's a bit rough.
Right. And I'm only afraid, I say that I'm excited, but I'm also a little scared because there's so much stuff on the table at the moment that I'm a little afraid that we're gonna have a bit of a too many cooks in the kitchen kind of situation, because we've already had some retcons in the series, and while it's a massive opportunity for different writers to write for the same thing in the same universe and just throw everything in the same pot, but at the same time it could make for some pretty heavy discrepancies, I feel.
Yeah, and there probably will be at least one major retcon that's going to happen, because we're talking about a franchise that is coming up in 3 years' time on its 15th year anniversary, and we're not supposed to see initiates at least until, or not initiates, my apologies, we're not supposed to see Infinity until at least next year. So there is going to be, at that point when it launches, and they're most likely already working on the content now. They've been working on the content for a while, because you're not going to be able to build this thing out like right after you finish the last game. You're going to start building it immediately. I want to say they started working on Assassin's Creed 2 before they finished Assassin's Creed 1, and just kind of delved in deeper into it once they saw the success of it. But the adaptions I was talking about, the Classics label, the Chronicles label, and the Originals label, I think they're going to fall to Infinity as well. Your Classics are going to take adaptations of the video games and expand on them, bring them to new locations. The Chronicles label is going to give you new stories for these protagonists or time periods, similar to what we're seeing with Valhalla. And then the Originals label are going to be our unique first appearances and stuff like that, or first stories. They could potentially bring in a old character, but like they did in Heresy, because that was an original. They will probably follow that same suit with Infinity. The too many cooks in the kitchen analogy, it's a good analogy, and it is a fear that a lot of people rightfully can have. But I feel that Ubisoft is going to be smart, or at least the Assassin's Creed team is going to be smart in how they do that, because they are most likely not going to just dump, say, like 50 different eras right away and say, figure it out or play as you want to. They'll probably have some kind of release window where it's like maybe once a quarter, they'll lay out their timeline like they have with the release window for Valhalla and say, here is the major focus for this season. We'll call them seasons, make it a little bit easier. It's like, okay, cool, we're going to go to AC China after all of the demand that we've had from players, and we're going to follow a new assassin that is, and I'm just making up a story here, a new assassin that's being trained by Xiaojun. Or
for example,
in the same brotherhood as Xiaojun, and telling that story, or they could just say, hey, here's Xiaojun in a full game, go for it, learn what's happened with Assassin's Creed China in a actual canonical story, because all of the expansions we've had with her now, with the mangas and the Ming Storm trilogy, which is still only on its first book, second book announced, but they haven't released it yet. All of that stuff is part of the Chronicles label, where it is a known character, but unfortunately with her expanded stories are just that. They're just expanded stories, but they're not canonical to it. So her past, prior to these books, and what happened in Assassin's Creed China and Assassin's Creed Embers, and all of the things that she had been put in codex-wise, all of that is legitimate, but these expansion stories are just kind of, this is an idea that we have, but we're not going to consider it canon because they could do something different with her. Because, we don't want to have the Assassin's Creed Awakening, I believe is what it was called, the manga for Black Flag.
Yeah.
That's not canon. This character doesn't exist. This was just a cool way of introducing it to the Asian market for what had been a very heavy Western-based franchise.
Yeah, but they're going to expand on that, I believe, right? They're going to make
they are going
a
to
sequel to his life, right? Before
Yes.
he died in the mansion.
Yes, there is going to be a new webtoon series that is going to expand on Edward's life.
And I think that only the mangas now of Xiaojun are canonical, right? Because, I'm not sure, but I think Chronicles, the past story of Xiaojun in Chronicles, I don't know if that's canonical anymore because the mangas are some kind of retelling things, I believe.
That's what it is. It's a retelling,
But it has
but
modern
it's just
day
a
in it,
way.
and modern day is canonical, so I don't know.
But
Well,
that's also
not
what I mean when I
necessarily.
say I'm afraid of having too many cooks in the kitchen. Like, of course, I think it's actually pretty cool to have different perspectives, retellings, especially with Assassin's Creed. Technically speaking, you could just say, oh yeah, no, this was just the way they told it through the Templar Animus, but this was actually the real one. But it becomes kind of a mess when you try to figure out the canonical, actual story. Because especially if it's not very specified. We still got people, even to make the silliest example, we still got people who don't know like which character was canon for Odyssey, and that changes a lot of things. If you look at the big plot picture.
And
That's definitely an issue with marketing.
I'm mad because of that because Ubisoft didn't have the guts to actually clear it out for people. They had to do it in a book, and that was very cowardly in my opinion.
Right. I think where they have fixed that, as we come towards the end of our conversation here, was with the crossover stories. Giving that story expansion as Cassandra, especially in the Valhalla aspects, because they're not going to bring over Alexios. They're bringing over Cassandra. So yes, there is a bit of confusion for some players that don't touch the DLCs, don't touch the transmedia. Because I know in my playthrough, I saved my entire family as Cassandra. And I'm like, that's the way that I wanted to have. And then I read the book, and I'm like, okay, what actually happened with Cassandra, coming to terms with Deimos, her brother Alexios, was a great end for that story. But the way that I was playing, with the assistance of a guidebook, because I love finding all the little pieces of the story, was pushed towards save your family, because that's what she wanted. So to me, I could just consider that being a dream, of hers. It's like, this is what I wanted, but it's obviously not what happened. She's been alive for 1,000 years. She's going to be alive for, a bit longer until she meets Layla.
She can be anywhere.
There's a lot of potential.
They really
like a sort of a modified memory that got influenced by time. That's my theory.
Yeah, Ubisoft made out of Cassandra like the character that can break every wall in the universe. She can be everywhere, anytime, at any time period. She could have done anything. She's now she's as important as Desmond was.
Right. Well, I think that all of these thoughts have left a lot of questions for everybody as a community, and I think it gives us as a team here with the ones who came before a great idea of the kind of things that we as a site will be exploring here in 2022. I know myself personally, I've got a lot of transmedia and stuff that's going to be dropping. I've got two books coming this week alone, or next week. I've got stuff coming in the summer to catch up with the European releases.
I have a lot of books
I
to
know
catch up on too.
there's going to be a lot of modern day stuff for Joe to explore. There's going to be a lot of artistic ideas that Sophia is going to have, and I think all of that is going to be something that we're going to see from our site and expand, over the next year. And in all honesty, I think that we'll probably see some more episodes of Corridor with our gracious host, bringing us back in and talking about these things, because there's going to be a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff for us to kind of go through. So, but with that, we'll get some quick closing thoughts. Was there anything that Joe, Sophia, that you guys wanted to say before we say goodbye to our community?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a rumor that's been going on. Apparently, Infinity is going to be accompanied by another new RPG game. Like, it's a new RPG game that is going to be decisive in terms of what's going to win next, Infinity or their RPG style. So it depends on how Infinity succeeds. Maybe the other one is going to move forward, but if the Infinity plan succeeds, then the RPG is going to be forgotten for good. I mean, that's what they say over in internet, and I think it was time, because Odyssey, Valhalla Origins have made us understand that Assassin's Creed can be adapted in many different playstyles, but I think now it's time to get closure and move on to something more back to the roots, per se, because I think it's been enough of hack and slash and Dark Souls-esque thing. It's been enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Sophia, what about you? Any final thoughts?
Well, vittoria agli assassini? No, I was thinking the same thing. I'm curious to see where the franchise will go. Honestly, I'm at that point where I'm just open to anything, and I think the good thing, good or bad, depending on the perspective. But I think the good thing about this community is that it's so, this franchise sucks you in so quickly and intensely that I think we're all gonna be here to see what happens next.
I think we can say it makes you thirsty of knowledge.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but every time we discover something new, I want to know what's the origin of that something new that has another origin.
Definitely.
It's endless.
And much like Layla and the reader inside Yggdrasil, we've got so many branches of stories that we're going to be able to explore and see, grow as this franchise continues to become a massive global property. So, but yeah, so I want to thank you both for joining us in today's episode of Corridor, and we'll talk to everybody again in the future.
Fair enough.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, really, thank you. I like this. It's my first time, so I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Now, here finally, I want to thank all of you for watching and listening to episode 20 of the Memory Corridor. I hope you enjoyed it. To stay up to date on everything happening on the ones who came before and more things Assassin's Creed, links to everybody's social media pages are down below. As always, if anyone has feedback and or topic ideas for future episodes, feel free to share it in the comments. On the subject of future episodes, stay tuned for the episodes we're going to be putting out throughout 2022 here. Among other episodes, we're going to be doing the last retrospective looks at older Assassin's Creed titles, focusing on AC1, Syndicate, and Black Flag, as well as hopefully making a big special episodes that's been a long time coming and in the making a reality. Now, once again, thanks for watching and listening, everyone. I hope to see all of you for the episodes we'll be putting out for the rest of the year. Until those come out, stay safe, everyone, and keep this awesome community what it is. And finally, a massive thanks to Michael for guest hosting and to Sophia and Joe for joining us. And with that, another year of the Memory Corridor has been kicked off. Stay safe and active, everyone. See you later, Assassins. Peace.